Omega followed a wounded hunter until Alpha King demanded to know who hid royal blood in rags. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emily Hawthorne had always lived on the fringes. An Omega in a world ruled by alphas, she had grown accustomed to being invisible. Her days were spent in the small cottage she had inherited from her mother, her only companion the quiet hum of the forest that surrounded her. The village she lived in was small, isolated, and its people were not known for their kindness. They had little tolerance for weakness, especially when it came to Omega women like her. She wasn't like the others. While the other Omega women in the village had been claimed by strong alphas, she remained untouched, her scent too faint to attract anyone's interest. But Emily didn't mind. She had grown used to her solitary existence, finding peace in the quiet and the safety of her small world. That was, until the day she saw him. It was a misty morning when Emily first encountered the wounded hunter. He stumbled through the edge of the forest, blood seeping from a wound in his side. His clothes were torn, his face masked in dirt, but there was something about him that caught her attention. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was an undeniable presence about him. His eyes, though clouded with pain, gleamed with a power that Emily couldn't ignore. She knew immediately that he was no ordinary hunter. He was too regal. Emily's heart raced as she approached him, instinctively wanting to help, but also cautious. She had heard rumors of rogue alphas who roamed the forests, dangerous and unpredictable. But this man, he didn't look like a rogue. He looked like something more, something powerful. She couldn't leave him there, so she did what she had never done before. She reached out. The moment her fingers touched his shoulder, the air around them seemed to change. A jolt of energy rushed through her, and for the first time in her life, Emily felt a connection, an undeniable pull. But she didn't understand it, not yet. The man grunted, his eyes flickering open as she helped him to his feet. He didn't speak at first, only watching her with a strange intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "You should leave," he rasped, his voice rough, but there was an authority in it that she couldn't ignore. "You're injured," Emily whispered, trying to steady him. "I can help." He shook his head slightly, his lips curling into a faint, but dangerous smile. "I don't need your help." But there was something in the way he said it, something that made Emily pause. There was a strange magnetism about him, a power that made her feel small in comparison. As he stood there, the silence between them stretched. His gaze was unwavering, and Emily couldn't look away. "I can't leave you like this," she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. Without warning, he took a step back, his gaze hardening. "Why are you still here, Omega?" he demanded, his tone sharp, almost commanding. Emily flinched at the word, but there was something in his eyes, something that made her want to stay. I can't leave you out here." The hunter seemed to study her for a moment longer, his expression unreadable. Then, with a sudden movement, he stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "Who are you hiding?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. Emily's breath caught in her throat, unsure of what he meant. But before she could respond, his expression shifted. His eyes, once dark with pain, now gleamed with something else, something she couldn't place. "I know what you are," he murmured, his voice filled with realization. "But you've been hiding it well, haven't you?" The words sent a chill down Emily's spine. She took a step back, heart racing. "What do you mean?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. The hunter took another step forward, his gaze fixed on her. "You're hiding royal blood beneath those rags," he said, his tone cold and calculating. "And I intend to find out why." Emily's world shifted in that moment. She hadn't realized it, but somehow, in the presence of this mysterious man, everything she had known, everything she had believed about herself, was about to change. She had no idea who this man really was, but one thing was certain, he was not just a hunter, and her life would never be the same. "I am not afraid of you," Emily whispered, her voice steady despite the wild thudding of her heart. She had never met anyone like him before. The hunter, no, the Alpha King, stared at her with piercing eyes, his gaze unsettling in its intensity. He knew something she didn't, something she couldn't understand. The weight of his words pressed on her, but Emily refused to show fear. She would not let him see the vulnerability he was trying to expose. Gabriel, the man before her, was not just a simple hunter. His presence, his confidence, his power, it all screamed royalty, but it was more than that. He exuded a force that made her feel both insignificant and yet deeply intrigued. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him, trying to decipher what he wanted, what his true purpose was. "I don't know what you think you know," she said softly, refusing to back down. "But you're wrong about me." Gabriel tilted his head slightly, a look of amusement crossing his face. "You think I don't see it?" he asked, his voice low and almost mocking. "The blood you carry, the power hidden beneath that weak exterior." Emily's stomach twisted, and she tried to step back, but his presence felt like a magnetic pull, drawing her in despite herself. He was right in one way. She had always known there was something different about her, something that set her apart from the other Omegas. But it was a secret she had kept buried deep inside, one she never dared to acknowledge. Until now, she had always assumed she was just another Omega, another girl who would fade into the background, unnoticed. But Gabriel saw through the facade. "What do you want from me?" Emily finally demanded, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. "Why are you here?" Gabriel stepped closer, and Emily instinctively took a step back. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension, and for a moment, the forest around them seemed to go silent. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. Emily flinched at the contact, but there was no malice in his touch, just a strange tenderness she didn't understand. "I don't want anything from you," Gabriel said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "I just need you to understand one thing." "What?" Emily asked, her throat dry. Gabriel's eyes locked onto hers, his expression unreadable. "You are not who you think you are, and I intend to find out why." Emily's heart raced as the realization hit her. She had no idea what he meant, but she couldn't deny the truth in his words. Everything she had known, everything she had believed about herself, was being questioned in this one moment. What was he trying to say? Why was he so certain of her bloodline, of the power he sensed inside her? The more she thought about it, the more questions arose. The past she had buried deep inside her seemed to be clawing its way to the surface. She didn't know how to stop it, but she knew one thing for sure. Gabriel Thornridge, Alpha King, was not going to let her walk away from this. Not without answers. "Come with me," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Emily wanted to refuse, to run far away from this man who knew too much. But there was something about his presence, something undeniable that made her want to trust him, even when every instinct told her to stay away. Slowly, she nodded. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel's lips curled into a small, mysterious smile. "To find the truth," he said simply. And with that, he turned, leading her into the unknown. Emily followed, her heart heavy with uncertainty, but also with a strange sense of destiny that she could no longer ignore. The journey through the dense forest felt like an endless stretch of time, where every step Emily took seemed to echo in her mind. Gabriel led the way with an unyielding pace, his presence like a shadow she couldn't escape, despite the distance between them. The trees towered above, their twisted branches intertwined to form a canopy, blocking out much of the sunlight. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, the quiet hum of nature surrounding them. Emily struggled to keep up, her feet stumbling over uneven ground, but she didn't dare speak a word. There was something unnerving about the way Gabriel moved, as if he were both part of the forest and apart from it, an enigma she couldn't quite grasp. She wanted to ask questions, to demand answers about what he had meant when he said she was hiding royal blood, but the words caught in her throat. She was afraid of what he might say. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. The sight before Emily took her breath away. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone structure, covered in creeping vines and moss. It was a place she had never seen before, though it seemed to pulse with an energy she couldn't understand. Gabriel turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "This is where the answers lie," he said, his voice carrying an authority that left no room for doubt. "Come." Emily hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The place felt wrong, as if it were alive in some way, but she followed him anyway. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. As they approached the stone structure, Gabriel placed a hand on the largest rock, his fingers brushing the surface in a reverent motion. A low hum filled the air, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. She could feel something stirring within the stone, something ancient and powerful. "What is this place?" she whispered, unable to hide the fear in her voice. Gabriel's gaze met hers, and for a moment, his eyes softened. "This is the heart of your heritage, Emily," he said softly. "It is where your bloodline began, and where it will come full circle." She looked at him, confusion clouding her thoughts. "My bloodline," she repeated, the words tasting strange in her mouth. Gabriel nodded, his gaze steady. "Yes, you are more than just an Omega. You carry the blood of kings, of rulers who shaped this land long before me." Emily felt the ground shift beneath her feet, as though the very earth was spinning. She couldn't breathe. The revelation hit her like a wave, crashing over her and pulling her under. She had always been so certain of who she was, so sure of her place in the world. But now, Gabriel's words shattered that certainty. She was not just an ordinary Omega. She was something else, something more. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This can't be true." Gabriel's hand gently cupped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "It is true," he said, his voice firm. "The royal blood runs through you, Emily, and it's time you accepted it." Emily took a step back, her mind racing. Everything she had known, everything she had been, was suddenly in question. She wanted to deny it, to push it all away, but deep down, she knew that the truth had always been there, waiting for her to see it. Gabriel's words echoed in her mind as she stood in the clearing, the ancient stone surrounding her. It was impossible to ignore the connection, the power that seemed to call to her from within. She was not just an Omega. She was something far greater, and Gabriel knew it. The realization filled her with a sense of dread, but also an undeniable thrill. Her life, as she had known it, was over. And in its place, something new, something dangerous and unknown, was taking its place. Gabriel stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "You were always meant to be here, Emily. You just didn't know it yet." The weight of his words settled over her, and for the first time, Emily understood that her fate had been written long before she had come to this forest. She wasn't just following him. She was following a path that had been set for her the moment she was born. As the realization of her true heritage settled in, Emily stood frozen, her body caught between disbelief and the raw power that now pulsed through her veins. Gabriel had spoken the words that shattered the life she had known, but they were not easy to accept. For years, she had been told she was just an ordinary Omega, destined to live a simple, unnoticed life. Now, everything she believed about herself was being questioned, and the weight of her royal blood seemed far too heavy to bear. "What does this mean for me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking louder would make the truth unbearable. Gabriel's gaze softened for the briefest moment, and for the first time, Emily saw a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. "It means," he began, his tone measured, "that you are no longer bound by the limitations of an ordinary Omega. You have the power to change everything, Emily, if you accept it." The last words hung in the air, heavy with expectation. She wanted to deny it, to tell him it wasn't true, but something deep inside her stirred. It was as if the power he spoke of had always been there, dormant and waiting. She had felt it in her bones from the moment she first met him, in the way her heart had raced when they stood together, in the quiet moments when she sensed something more in the air between them. Gabriel continued, his voice low but firm. "The royal blood runs through your veins, and with it comes responsibility, power, and a destiny that can no longer be ignored." Emily's thoughts were a whirlwind. How could she, an unclaimed Omega with no experience in power or politics, possibly live up to what Gabriel was asking of her? "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've spent my whole life hiding, trying not to be noticed. How can I suddenly accept this power?" Gabriel's eyes softened, and for the first time, he stepped closer to her, his presence warm and reassuring. "You don't have to do it alone," he said quietly. "I will help you, guide you. You are not just anyone, Emily. You are the key to uniting this land." His words rang in her ears, stirring something deep within her that she could not ignore. She had always known she was different, but now she understood the truth of it. Gabriel had given her a choice, a chance to rise above the life she had known and step into the future that awaited her. But the thought of accepting such power, of embracing her destiny, terrified her. She had never wanted to be at the center of attention, never desired to wield power over others. But now, with Gabriel standing before her, offering his support, she felt a stirring in her chest, a spark of hope she had long buried. The decision was hers, and the weight of it pressed on her shoulders like a mountain. "What happens if I refuse?" she asked, her voice small but determined. Gabriel looked at her with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "If you refuse, the bloodline will be lost," he said softly. "The land will remain divided, and the darkness that threatens us all will only grow stronger." His words hit her like a thunderclap. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle. Within her, she knew she could not ignore her calling, not when the fate of everything she had ever known hung in the balance. "I will accept it," she said quietly, the words feeling both foreign and natural on her tongue. "I will accept my destiny." Gabriel's eyes shone with something unreadable, but his expression softened. "You will not regret this, Emily. Together, we will restore the balance." As he spoke, Emily felt a strange warmth spread through her, a feeling of peace she had never known. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. With Gabriel by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey was just beginning, and Emily knew that, with every step she took, she was embracing her true self, the Omega destined to change everything. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and quiet realization. Emily found herself walking alongside Gabriel, deeper into the forest, away from the safety of her small village, into a world she barely understood. It was a world of power, ancient traditions, and expectations she was now bound to. The forest seemed endless, its shadows growing darker with each step they took. Gabriel was a constant presence at her side, his footsteps sure and steady, but there was a distance in his eyes that Emily couldn't quite place. Despite his earlier kindness, she sensed there was more to him than he let on. His gaze lingered on her often, filled with something unreadable. They spoke little as they traveled, each lost in their thoughts. Emily couldn't help but wonder what was expected of her now. The royal bloodline that Gabriel had spoken of weighed heavily on her mind. What did it truly mean to be a part of it? What was she supposed to do with the power that ran through her veins? Her mind swirled with questions, and yet there were no answers to be found. Gabriel was always just out of reach, a guide in this unfamiliar world, but never fully open with her. The quiet tension between them grew as the days passed. Emily tried to focus on the world around her, the beauty of the forest, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, but it was hard to ignore the growing sense of dread in her chest. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the forest floor, they reached their destination. A clearing, surrounded by towering trees, opened up before them. At the center stood an ancient stone structure, weathered by time, but still standing strong, a testament to the generations that had passed. The air in the clearing was thick with the weight of history. Emily could feel it, a hum in the air, like the pulse of the earth itself. Gabriel stepped forward, his hand brushing against the stone. "This is where it all begins," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. Emily stood still, taking in the sight before her. The structure was a reminder of the power and legacy that had been lost, and the responsibility she now carried. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the girl she had been. Gabriel turned to her, his expression serious. "This is the place where your bloodline connects to the world around you," he explained. "This is where your destiny begins, Emily. This is where you will claim your place." Emily felt a chill run down her spine at his words. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this. She wasn't sure she ever could be. But there was no turning back now. Gabriel took her hand, his grip firm, as if offering her strength. "You are stronger than you think," he said, his voice soft but full of conviction. "The power that flows through you is ancient, Emily. It has always been there, waiting for you to awaken it. And now it is time." The world around her seemed to fall away as Gabriel led her to the center of the clearing, where a large stone circle lay. He guided her to stand in the middle, his hand still holding hers. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Emily took a deep breath, her heart racing in her chest. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel smiled softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You step into your destiny," he said simply. And with that, the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, the air around her thickening. A bright light enveloped her, and, for a brief moment, Emily felt as though she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. She was no longer just an Omega. She was something more, something ancient, something powerful. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. The journey ahead was uncertain, but with Gabriel by her side, she knew she was ready to face whatever came next. The light that enveloped Emily was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was warm, yet charged with an energy that made her feel as though she was being pulled in every direction at once. Her heart raced in her chest, but for the first time, it wasn't out of fear, it was out of anticipation. She could feel the power stirring inside her, the royal blood that Gabriel had spoken of awakening in response to the energy around her. It was as if her very being was resonating with the pulse of the earth itself. She wasn't just standing on the ground anymore. She was connected to it, to everything. Gabriel stood beside her, his hand still holding hers, grounding her in the midst of the overwhelming sensation. He said nothing, allowing the moment to unfold in silence. Emily's breathing slowed as she focused on the feeling inside her, the power that had been dormant all her life. She had always known there was something different about her, but now, it was impossible to deny it. The light around her began to dim, and when it finally faded, she stood still in the center of the stone circle, her body humming with newfound strength. She felt stronger, more aware, as though every part of her had been awakened. Gabriel stepped closer, his eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel as though he could see straight through her. "Do you feel it?" he asked, his voice low, filled with awe. Emily nodded, unable to find the words to describe the sensation that still surged within her. "I do," she whispered. "I feel everything." Gabriel's expression softened, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, a mixture of pride and something deeper, something more personal. "It's only just begun," he said, his voice tinged with reverence. "The power inside you will grow stronger with time. But now, you must learn to control it." Emily swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. Control. That was the one thing she had never been good at. She had always lived in the shadows, hiding her true self from the world. How could she possibly learn to control the power now flowing through her veins? Gabriel seemed to sense her doubt. "You are not alone in this," he said, his voice reassuring. "I will guide you. Together, we will make sure you are ready." Emily looked up at him, meeting his gaze. She had never felt more vulnerable, more exposed, but for the first time, she also felt something else, hope. She had a purpose now. The bloodline, the power, the responsibility, it was all real, and she was the one who had to carry it. The thought was daunting, but she wasn't as afraid as she had been before. With Gabriel by her side, she felt like she could face anything. "What comes next?" Emily asked, her voice steady now, no longer filled with uncertainty. Gabriel smiled, his eyes filled with a knowing that made her heart flutter. "Now we begin the journey to claim what is yours," he said. "The road ahead will not be easy, but it will be worth it. You are the key to uniting this land, Emily, and together, we will restore what has been lost." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle over her. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she could not yet comprehend, but she was no longer afraid. She had a destiny now, a purpose, and Gabriel would help her walk the path. With a final glance at the stone circle that had revealed her true power, Emily knew one thing for sure. Her life was never going to be the same again. The days that followed were filled with a growing sense of purpose for Emily. As she walked alongside Gabriel, the weight of her royal bloodline no longer felt like a burden, but rather a responsibility she had to accept. Gabriel was patient with her, guiding her through each step, teaching her the ways of the world she was now a part of. The journey was long, and at times, the silence between them was heavy. But Gabriel's presence was a constant reassurance. He was there, watching over her, as if her every move mattered to him. They traveled through forests and across rivers, the landscape changing with each passing day. The world outside the village seemed vast, and yet it felt strangely familiar to Emily, as though she had always known this world was hers. One evening, after a long day of traveling, they reached a small clearing where Gabriel stopped. The air was cool, and the sky above was painted with the colors of twilight. Emily, though tired, felt a strange sense of anticipation. She looked at Gabriel, his eyes reflecting the fading light of the day. "This is it," Gabriel said softly, his gaze never leaving hers. "The beginning of the rest of your life, Emily. You are ready." Emily felt her pulse quicken at his words. Was she really ready? She had never imagined her life would take such a drastic turn, from a simple Omega living on the outskirts of society to someone destined to wield power, to unite the land. But Gabriel was right. The bloodline in her veins was not something she could ignore. It was a part of who she was now, and with it came the power to change everything. "What happens next?" Emily asked, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Gabriel smiled, a small but knowing smile, as if he had been waiting for her to ask. "Now, we head to the capital," he said. "You will meet the other leaders, and you will claim your place among them. It's time to take your place as the future queen of this land." The words sounded strange coming from his lips, but Emily knew he spoke the truth. She was no longer the girl she had been. She was no longer an unnoticed Omega. She had a future now, one that was intertwined with the fate of the kingdom. Gabriel reached out, his hand brushing hers as he spoke again. "You're not alone in this, Emily. I will be with you, every step of the way." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled in her heart. For the first time since learning about her true heritage, Emily felt a sense of peace. She was ready. The road ahead was uncertain, and the challenges she would face were beyond what she had ever imagined. But with Gabriel by her side, she knew she could face anything. The journey had only just begun, but Emily was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. The power within her had awakened, and she was ready to embrace her destiny. As they continued on their journey, the world around them felt different. The sky seemed clearer, the air fresher, and the path ahead felt brighter. Emily knew that she was on the right path now, and nothing would stop her from claiming what was rightfully hers. The journey to the capital was long, and with each passing day, Emily felt herself growing stronger. Gabriel was always by her side, offering guidance, but the silence between them was becoming harder to ignore. There were moments when Emily would catch him watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. It wasn't the look of someone simply watching over a charge. It was something deeper, something more personal. Yet, she kept her distance, unsure of what to make of the feelings that had begun to stir inside her. As they drew closer to the city, the landscape began to change. The wild forests gave way to farmland, and the roads became busier, with travelers and merchants making their way to the capital. The smell of fresh bread and the sounds of distant chatter filled the air. Emily had never seen so many people in one place before. It was overwhelming, and yet, there was something exhilarating about it. Gabriel seemed unbothered by the crowds, walking with a steady pace, his eyes focused ahead. But Emily couldn't help but notice the glances people threw their way, whispers that quickly stopped when they realized who he was. She knew that the moment they stepped into the capital, everything would change. No longer would she be a simple, unnoticed Omega. She was about to face a world full of powerful leaders, each with their own agendas. The weight of her destiny pressed heavily on her shoulders. By the time they reached the gates of the capital, the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, the sun setting behind the towering walls. The city before her was unlike anything she had imagined. Tall buildings made of stone and marble stretched into the sky, and the streets were lined with fountains and banners bearing the royal sigil. The sound of horses' hooves clattering against cobblestones echoed in the distance. Gabriel led her through the massive gates, his presence commanding immediate attention. It wasn't long before they were met by a group of guards, their armor gleaming in the fading light. "His Majesty has been expecting you, Alpha Gabriel," one of the guards said, his voice respectful but filled with awe. Emily couldn't help but feel small in comparison to the grandeur of the city and the power that seemed to hum in the air. She felt out of place, as if the world around her was too big for someone like her. But Gabriel's steady hand on her back reassured her, grounding her in the moment. "Thank you," Gabriel replied, his voice calm and authoritative. As they entered the palace, Emily was struck by the sheer opulence of it all. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, and tapestries depicting the kingdom's history adorned the walls. It was a world that seemed to exist only in stories, and now, she was a part of it. They were led through a series of corridors to a large chamber where a council of leaders sat, their eyes all turning to Gabriel as he entered. Emily stood quietly beside him, feeling the weight of their gazes upon her. She had been prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the feeling of standing before so many powerful figures. Gabriel, however, remained unmoved. He addressed the council with the same calm authority he had shown her during their journey. "This is Emily Hawthorne," he said, his voice carrying through the room. "She is the one who will unite us all." The words echoed in Emily's mind, and she felt her heart race. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of something much larger than herself, and it was both terrifying and thrilling at the same time. The council members exchanged looks, some skeptical, others intrigued. Emily's gaze flitted nervously across the room, but Gabriel's steady presence beside her made her feel stronger. This was her moment. She had been called to this place for a reason, and no matter how uncertain she felt, she knew she couldn't turn back. Gabriel's hand subtly rested on her shoulder, offering her silent support. She took a deep breath, ready to step into the future that awaited her. "We are ready," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced in her chest. The room seemed to hold its breath as they all waited for the council's reaction. For the first time since she had learned of her true heritage, Emily felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The room was heavy with silence as Emily stood at the front of the council, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes on her. The leaders of the various factions, their faces unreadable, watched her with a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and expectation. Gabriel stood by her side, his presence a steady reassurance, but the uncertainty in Emily's chest lingered. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet standing in the midst of the council, she felt the pressure of her new reality. The air seemed to vibrate with unspoken questions. Gabriel's calm voice cut through the tension as he spoke again. "This is Emily Hawthorne," he repeated, his tone strong. "She carries the bloodline of the first kings. She is the future of our land." Emily couldn't help but glance around the room, her gaze briefly meeting each leader's eyes. Some faces softened at Gabriel's words, others remained stern, unmoving. But it was the quiet one at the far end of the room, an older man with silver hair and a lined face, who caught her attention. His eyes were sharp, and he regarded her with a look that was almost as if he were measuring her worth. Emily held her breath, waiting for the inevitable question, the doubt that would come. After what seemed like an eternity, the man spoke, his voice gravelly but steady. "She looks like a simple omega to me," he said, his tone skeptical but not unkind. "What makes you so sure she is the one to unite us?" The words stung, but Emily held her ground. Gabriel's hand, which had rested on her shoulder, gave her a slight, reassuring squeeze. Emily turned to face the council, her voice stronger now, more certain. "I may look like just an omega," she began, her eyes scanning the room, "but I carry a legacy, one that is older than any of you." Her words rang out, more powerful than she had intended. The council was silent, waiting. Emily felt the stirrings of something ancient inside her, the power Gabriel had spoken of awakening. "I may not have the strength of an alpha, but I carry the strength of my bloodline. It is not about brute force. It is about unity, wisdom, and the ability to lead with compassion." She paused, letting her words sink in, her heart beating steadily in her chest. "I am not the woman I once was. I have the power to change things, to bring us together, to ensure that no one is left behind." The room remained silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Gabriel stood beside her, his presence no longer just a comfort, but a symbol of the alliance they were forging. Finally, the older man with the silver hair spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "And if the others do not follow? If they refuse to accept this new path?" Emily's heart raced, but she met his gaze without flinching. "Then I will fight for it," she said, her voice steady. "I will fight for the future we all deserve." The man's expression softened, a glimmer of something like respect in his eyes. "You have spirit," he said, nodding slowly. "Perhaps there is more to you than meets the eye." The tension in the room slowly began to dissipate, but Emily knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would not be easy, and there would be those who would resist, who would fight against the change she represented. But for the first time, Emily felt the weight of her destiny not as a burden, but as a responsibility she was ready to embrace. Gabriel's voice broke the silence once more. "We stand with her," he said, his words clear and resolute. "This is the future we will build together." The room was still, but Emily could feel the shift, the beginning of something new. It was the start of her journey, one that would take her to places she could never have imagined. But no matter what came next, she was ready. With Gabriel by her side, Emily knew they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would rebuild, and together, they would unite the land.